These laws were recently put in place aimed at terrorists, but they apply to us all. Normally, people could discuss a search warrant with a lawyer, but not with these laws.
There are circumstances in which the person is not allowed to communicate anything, not to their family, not to anyone.
That book was censored by the government against my will. After they had censored it, they demanded I sign a deed which included me agreeing to never revealing that the book was censored. I refused to sign that and said I never would. Under pressure, they removed that clause. So now I can tell you that the book was censored. The deed requires that I not tell you what was removed from the book.
As a whistleblower in the area of national security, Wilkie was tripping over the more than 500 laws governing secrecy provisions. Closer to home, a simple thank you to Kate Burton would only make things worse.
I was a little bit surprised to see that in the book, but, you know, if Andrew feels that I'd been influential, then, you know, it's not my place to say that's not true.
On day one of a new job in Parliament House, Dr. Kate Burton's growing closeness to Andrew Wilkie was to have consequences.
I was about to start work on the Intelligence Committee, and the morning I started I was pulled aside and a photocopy from the book was placed in front of me, and it was that page that said I had been highly influential. I was told that there'd been concerns raised by some politicians on that committee, so I was removed and sent somewhere else. It says a lot about the way Canberra operates, that someone's punished in that way, or hated in some circles, for telling the truth.
I ran against John Howard in 2004 in his Sydney seat of Bennelong, and I'm pleased to say forced him to preferences, and his seat was marginal after that. In some ways, I ran against him because the matter was personal.
Wilkie ran as a candidate for the Greens.
A good Australian campaign. A good, honest campaign. Exactly. You're lucky.
He, at the end of the day, was the human being who was driving government policy and was personally responsible for so much of the official misconduct I'd been complaining about.
The Iraqi regime has continued to lie and...
But in other ways, it wasn't personal at all. I did see him very much as the Prime Minister and not so much John Howard the man. And I tried not to make it personal.
To his credit, John Howard was always very polite, on camera anyway, and in front of the crowds. But it was an interesting contest for that reason. It was more than a political contest, there was a personal element as well.
Wilkie lost, but he did get a swing of 14% and an appetite for politics.
We love politics. Politics is what sort of drew us together, I think, in the first place, and it's been, you know, it's a constant theme in our lives.
A theme that was about to repeat itself in their new home, Tasmania.
Since we moved here, Kate and I got married. We've had 2 children. We bought a house. We've bought a small business. We love this place.
Great.
I love my 2 little girls. There is so much that is perfect about a little child.
Got a hat on to keep her warm?
They've never knowingly done anything wrong. They've never lied. They've never hurt anyone knowingly. They're these 2 perfect little human beings, and I never cease to be amazed by just how wonderful and perfect they are. And they've totally changed my life.
He's someone who, when he sets his mind to doing something, he does it really, really well, regardless of what it is. And I think being a dad is one of those things for him.
How old are you?
Sometimes I think we're a little bit like the odd couple. One's the sort of slightly anal, obsessive, compulsive, and one's more relaxed. He keeps me in line and I help him to relax and, you know, not worry so much.
If you are quite particular and you've got an ordered mind and you want to do things right, well then, you know, maybe you can go on and try and tackle a big wrong.
His sister once showed me a photo of him, I think, when he was maybe 5 or 7, heading off to school with his neat uniform and his little suitcase, standing just so. And she said, See, it wasn't the military that did it to him. He was already like that.
I know in my heart that I'm as average and ordinary and imperfect as everyone else. I've done as much wrong in my life as everyone else has done in their life. But when I was confronted with the one big one, I knew I had to act in a certain way, and I did, and I chose right.
Canberra, the city of public servants, is not a town that tolerates those public servants who speak out. Back in a town where he was comfortable, Andrew Wilkie now treads carefully. His circle of friends shrunken back by his actions 6 years ago.
After I left O&A, I assumed I was the subject of surveillance. I had a head full of sensitive information, and I think it would have been entirely proper for probably ASIO to have kept track of me and who I was talking to and what I was saying publicly for a period of time. And I don't criticise ASIO if they did that. However, I had to be very, very careful, and I think I was, of not dragging any of my friends and acquaintances into trouble with me during that period of time. One of the reasons why I basically lost a lot of friends was that I pushed some friends away for their protection because they didn't realise what a political hot potato I was. And I knowingly pushed some friends away and lost them, even though I didn't want to.
If life's journeys are recorded by friends, marked out by acquaintance, then Andrew Wilkie has come some distance. His journey made simpler by a sense of strategy from his army days.
He's a very clear and strategic thinker. He was very sure of his ground the whole time, so he didn't really have anything to worry about, really, other than being possibly thrown in jail. Just a small thing.
Being thrown out of society was the alternative.
For 2.5 years, I had been unable to get a job in Canberra. I had applied a number of times for a number of jobs, and I kept missing out.
Andrew and his wife ended up with a business that is not a million miles away from the region that got him into trouble in the first place. In the rug business, it helps to have more than a passing fascination with the Middle East.
So the shop's a bit of a mess.
There's sort of a nice sort of international aspect to the work there. A lot of the people who come into the shop are interested in things happening in those parts of the world, so there's the opportunity for him to chat to customers about that kind of thing.
Yeah, rugs made by the Baluch, be they in Pakistan or across in Iran, you can easily identify them as Baluch.
In truth, this is where Andrew Wilkie would rather end up. Tasmanian Parliament.
Thank you.
I want to get into the Parliament and I want to be a lawmaker. You know, if I want to make Tasmania a better place, then the best place to do it is by being in the Parliament. No independent has been elected to the Tasmanian lower house since they reduced the size of the Parliament about a decade ago. I've got to be realistic. I think my chances are small, but I think they're real. People in Tasmania, they're very proud of their little state. I'm very proud of living in Tasmania. They get mixed up with the big issues and they take sides and they have views and they express their views. It can be a pretty rough and tumble place down here. You have a strong sense of living on an island. The marine environment influences Tasmania and the way we go about our things and our whole view of the world greatly. It is different to the mainland in many respects.
A lot of people don't understand this, but the reason he made the decision he did to blow the whistle, if you like, on Iraq is because he cares about Australia and he cares about Australia doing the right thing in the world. And he cares about Australia's reputation as a good international citizen, and all of those things he knew would be undermined by the decision to join the invasion of Iraq.
I never wanted weapons of mass destruction to be found. I never wanted anything in particular in that regard. People ask me, Would it have been good if weapons of mass destruction were found and the war might have somehow been justified and warranted? In my opinion, it's an absurd question to ask because they were never going to be found.
But what if he'd been wrong? What if there had been weapons of mass destruction? Does that mean his speaking out was suddenly discredited? And my answer is to say, no, we need people to speak out in any case, because you can't be absolutely sure of everything you say is correct.
A more relevant question is, what if the Iraqis had had a little bit of weapons of mass destruction, and if they'd used it, what then? What that would have unleashed would have been horrendous. If the Iraqis had had, you know, those few hundred shells of mustard gas, and if they had fired them on US troops, I have no doubt the US would have used battlefield nuclear weapons against Iraqi forces. And that would have been a scenario so breathtakingly horrendous. It is only years down the track and looking back do I realise just what a big deal it was. Not only that it was a good thing for me personally that I can live with myself, but I think I also did a good thing for a lot of other people who were feeling the same way as me, maybe not as well informed, but they felt they didn't have a voice, and they were very heartened by me speaking up. I was sort of the voice of many other people.
Next time on Law and Disorder, how the system hunts down whistleblowers.
I didn't do it in the first place.
Alan Kessing was convicted of leaking a report that exposed a $200 million hole in security at Sydney Airport. 4 years and 2 trials later, he is defiant but broke. And for exclusive web-only episodes, go to sbs.com.au/law and disorder.